Back, guys. My next guest, she is the founder and CM. Nope, didn't do that one. All right. Welcome back, guys. My next guest, she lived in LA for 20 years, but she is originally from St. Louis and a diehard Cardinals fan. This will be a fun podcast because I love the Stros. She likes to tell people she didn't get an MBA because she went to Red Bull College, and her two greatest creations in life are her 5 and 7-year-old kids, where she coaches their little league teams. Founder CMO of the CMO Sidekick, Lindsey Scheftic. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks so much for having me. What a great intro. You
Yeah.
got it all.
Well, so the Cardinals part, I'm giving you a hard time, but if you love baseball as passionately as I do, and the people that listen to the podcast all the time are probably tired of hearing me about my baseball stories, but love the Cardinals, even though I'm an Astros fan. My buddy played for the Cubs. But again, if you love baseball, you have to love
Oh,
the Cardinals.
totally. I just took my kids to Chicago for the 4th of July and we went to a Cubs Cards game, all dressed head to toe in our red. We
Let's go.
survived. We're alive.
Good.
Cubs fans have gotten a little bit nicer through the years. Maybe they've gotten in trouble for not being so nice in the past, but it was a very pleasant experience. And then we went to St. Louis after Chicago and brought my kids to a Cardinals national game, and we did it. We That was my kids' first time at Busch Stadium. It was just such a proud parent moment for me. Raising Cardinal fans in LA is not easy, but yeah, it was really fun. Big baseball fan.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's actually one of so having worked in baseball forever, I've probably been to over 125 different stadiums, both minor league and major league. And that is by far one of my most favorite stadiums. Intentionally, when I used to go there to visit Anheuser-Busch before it moved, I would definitely stay at the hotel that was right in the outfield, out in the
Yeah,
right field. And I was like, this is the coolest thing by far. And then now you have the Braves that have built a hotel in the right field. So it's kind of like you
it's like
guys,
a new thing.
yeah, you found it
Yeah.
everything. You got it figured out. So tell me a little bit more. Like, what was that? What was that like being from St. Louis and then transitioning out to LA? Like significant cultural differences, geography. Your kids probably had to. We were just discussing how hot it is in St. Louis
Yep.
and how chilly out in LA. So what is that like for you?
I mean, it was a great, I think, cultural experience for me. When I moved out to LA, I didn't know anybody except my older brother had moved out here like 2 years before. And so, but if you know anything about LA, where you live is kind of where you live. And my brother lived in Beverly Hills, and I moved to the South Bay. I'm a beach girl. And so I rarely saw him because going from the South Bay to Beverly Hills is, like during a traffic time could take an hour and a half. So you just kind of never travel out of where you live. But yeah, just I threw myself as I do into work and made lots of work friends. And as you know, I'm a big sports fan. And when I moved out here, how I made friends was joining sports teams. So I played kickball, I played softball. I When I moved out here, I was working for Saatchi and Saatchi. I played on their softball team, and I joined a flag football league. My taste of LA was I was put on a flag football team with all the people from Real World Road Rules Challenge.
Oh
And
wait, which one?
so no, it was like CT and Diem and just like all of the guys who were on those shows. I don't know why I got put onto their flag football team. And so we play flag football, we go have drinks. I had just moved to LA. I'm like, wow, I'm like already hanging with D-list celebrities. This is amazing.
I love this. My
Yeah.
my brother's one of his good friends, who's now gone on to become very famous, Theo Vaughn, was
Oh,
on
yeah.
one of the original Road Rules. So I was
Yeah.
wondering if he was on your kickball team.
Yeah. He was not on the team, I don't think,
Yeah.
but yeah, just but yeah, like obviously a lot of cultural differences living out here, and takes you a little bit of time to settle in LA. I would say a few years to make some really good friends, and obviously I've been out here for 20 years now, and love it. And my whole immediate family lives out here now, so I've kind of everybody has migrated, which is nice to have family nearby. And but yeah, it's a great city, and I live in the bubble, as they say, and I just try not to leave the bubble very much. So
Yeah, the bubble is a real thing out in LA. So I don't, and you're in the good bubble compared to where your brother is for sure.
I think so.
Um, well, so it's kind of unintentionally, but it's become a thing where every one of our guests is some sort of athlete, minus a couple of our guests, which previously this past season, we had a guy that used to be a mime, which is
Oh.
hilarious in itself, but athlete as well. But we've also had a handful of guests that also now coach their kids. So what is that like, having coaching little league for a 5 and 7 year old? And what type of coach are you? Are you like the very passionate or more like the sympathetic coach?
Um, I would say here I'm probably more of an encouraging coach, I would say. I think baseball in LA, Little League is pretty intense.
Yep.
There's lots of parents raising their kids to be professional athletes, and which is great. But also they're 5 and 7, and at this age, in my opinion, like it should be fun. We should like be out here having fun. We shouldn't be burning 5 year olds and 7 year olds out on baseball and their first quarter or 10 years of life. So I try to just have a lot of fun with the kids. Like, there's a time to be serious, but there's a time to be silly and have fun because at the end of the day, they are just kids. So I try to have drills, but try to bring in just other things to do for the kids to just have fun and be able to just kind of be kids. And it's fun to be competitive, but it's also fun to be a good sport and be able to say, hey, it's okay. We did our best. If we walked away doing our best, then that's all that matters, right? If you personally tried your hardest and you can walk away from the game saying, I tried my hardest, that's all that matters. So
Now, does that transition over to Lindsay on work side?
yeah, for sure. I think so. I think, I always try my best and it's usually enough, I would say. But I think, I always go at things, 150%, even if it's a tiny job to a big job. And at the end of the day, if I can go to sleep saying I did the best job I could do today, if it wasn't the best for someone else, then maybe it's not a good fit. But yeah, I think that that's kind of how I approach everything in life.
Yeah. So let's jump into let's talk about your journey, because it's a very, like, if you were coming out of college and midway through your 20s, like you would want to have the career that you've had. Like it's super fun. Like your LinkedIn, it's like the best logos ever, because you're like,
Thank
yep,
you.
yep, yep. Yeah. So you and I kind of talked before, but you started out in the agency side. So you'd mentioned you worked for Crispin Porter, Saatchi and Saatchi, but then, not that those are irrelevant, but let's jump to like the fun. So you tell people you didn't get an MBA because you went through Red Bull College, which I love that. I almost went down the Nike path, which is very similar in that
Similar.
sense. Yeah, so 2 year. But touch on that. Like, how did you move from the agency side over to Red Bull? And then I want to spend some time here and kind of talk about your journey, because you were there for almost 5 years.
Yeah. I kind of always had an intention of going client side, but I started my career on the agency side and it was really fun. And, I always told my mom, I'm like, I'm going to work on a client one day and then I'm going to just try my hardest to go work there. And this is what happened. I started working at Kastner and Partners, which is kind of like Red Bull's in-house agency. And I spent, you know, 99% of my time at Red Bull offices. Most people, it was just on the street. So most people just assumed I was there anyways. And they had a brand marketing position. The brand marketing team was very new there and they had reached out to me. I wasn't even at Costner under a year, and said, hey, we have this role for brand marketing. We think you'd be perfect for it. We want you to come over. And I said, absolutely. And it was a very intentional transition. I kind of gunned to work there. I just had so much fun, but also learning so much about, influencer before influencer was even a thing. I mean, we were sending out kits to athletes and starting to utilize their social media before any brand was doing that. And we were creating these amazing experiences where you could like just touch and feel the brand, and going to soapbox races and the flu tugs. And then you're in, uh, I worked on the NASCAR launch with them, and I was a part of, launching NASCAR in the US with Red Bull, the Red Bull team. And I worked on a space jump. I worked just pretty much during like the height, I would say, of the five best Red Bull years I was there, and really kind of building that truly like what brand marketing was, um, and it was just such an incredible experience. And I really like to think like when everyone is zigging in the marketplace, I like to zag. And when I have clients, I kind of tell them that like we shouldn't show up expected. We should show up unexpected. We should always think about how we can cut through and how we can like surprise people, because those are the things that people remember and what really sticks out to them. And I think that's kind of really that pivotal moment in my career is what has really shaped, shaped where I'm at, and kind of the marks I've made at some of the brands I've been at.
Yeah. So, and I want to spend more time here because I want to dive deep because having worked on the event side, like it is grueling. So maybe that was your time at the in-house agency where, day in a life was, it maybe seemed glamorous, but it was also like, there was a lot of work behind that. So like what
Totally.
impact did that have? Like and having gone to NASCAR races myself and seeing behind the scenes in the pits and on the inside of the track, like you see these brand folks, like it's straight work, but a lot of those people, it's just, they love working in events. But was it, as you were working, the end goal, as you had mentioned, is to work at Red Bull, but what, there had to have been something that was like, oh yeah, like this brand is even cooler than what I imagine. And it's more than
Yeah,
just giving kits and being at a cool event.
totally. I think for me, it was that even though a lot of what we did seemed very random, it was very strategic. And, I actually had an opportunity to live in Austria for a year, and was a part of the business planning process. And the global marketing team in Austria and Fuschel, they all actually had a CPG background. And so, they had a lot of rigor around the planning and around the strategy and the coordinated efforts from a global brand marketing to regional or countrywide brand marketing efforts. And to me that was so interesting, was like, oh, what I learned was not, these things weren't just random. And an agency, you work on a campaign, right? Or maybe you work on a couple campaigns, but you don't always get to see the full picture behind that planning and how all the messaging comes together. And I think that's something that Red Bull does really well,
Mhm.
is figure out what that strategic plan is. What are the messages that they want to put into the world? And then, what is then that creative output in each market? And so, yeah, I mean, obviously working on events is very grueling, but like I love rolling up my sleeves. I love kind of getting into the work. And the thing about Red Bull, and what I say to people is like, you don't understand who your customer is and who your audience is until you go to an event with them, until
Mhm.
you're at an event with them. And, even in my time at Vans and other places, like bringing your customers and your audiences together and going to those events and seeing how the event transpires and the feedback and what people are posting about, that really gives you a good picture of who you're talking to, so then you can market to them better next time. And so I think those were some of like the grueling life lessons, and also just why it was so important that I get that time there, was just I knew that that was going to be a place that I was learning a lot of fundamental marketing, but unfundamental marketing, because I think they just do things so differently. But then having that, getting that really good like strategic background that I maybe just kind of didn't get a full picture of in agency life.
Yeah. What because most, again, to your point, like most brands, it's very strategic. It's like, here's your audience, target audience, and we're gonna, whether it's events that are built around them with the end goal of like falling in love with the event, the athlete, and then eventually, you want them to go to the convenience store to buy the brand itself. But Red Bull, it's so vast, right? So I just got back from the beach and they had the Red Bull helicopter and the Red Bull plane, and the guy skydived out of the helicopter as the helicopter was, flying upside down. I was like, this is wild. But then you have NASCAR, then you have the space jump, then you have Formula One, and then you have what is it called where they jump off the ramp and create their
Utah.
own? Yeah, the Flutog. So the question is it's so all over the place. But to your point, it's very strategic. But how was that, having so many different target audiences, but almost creating these many like cultural relevant moments and events that
Totally.
brought everyone together? I mean, that was like chaos in a bottle in a positive sense.
Totally. I think like I think what Red Bull did really well is that they look at attitudinal audiences. It's not, you work with a lot of brands and they're like, they want to reach this demographic. And whenever I start to work with a brand, and I'm working with a new brand right now, it's a new IP, and I've said to them, that's great that you want to reach Gen Z, but like, what is the attitudes? Like, who are the people within that we're trying to reach? And I think you're limiting yourself to one generation because I think your product, the attitudes lend much further out where you're going to have a much more success that with maybe even a little bit older of a generation that has a similar mindset to where you're at. And I think that's something that Red Bull did really well, even though we were like in all these pockets of things, it was more of an attitudinal audience and like people in need of energy, right? Well, that
Right.
can span traditional sports, which they weren't in originally, but I helped actually work on some of the first basketball deals and some of the first mainstream sports advertising buys I was a part of with Fox Sports, and that applies to people who are in extreme sports or you know. And the thing about Red Bull is not just about body; it's about body and mind. So there's some like mind things about creating a contraption that can fly off a platform into the water and how far it goes, and that Red Bull gives you that energy to not just physically do things but to focus and have your mind focus. Everything's about body and mind. And so that kind of gave way to creative ideas and kind of going into avenues or pockets of culture that we maybe hadn't even thought about. Man, like breakdancing, like Red Bull
Mhm.
owns breakdancing. No brand had ever gone in and kind of taken over in that type of arena. And I think it's by looking, not narrowing yourself to like an age demographic or a male or a female, but more looking at this attitudinal target is what kind of made the brand really special and how they came to market across so many different areas.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the new company that you started, but God, now it proves out like you had such a wide variety of audiences within one brand itself. So, all right, and we normally don't do this with our guests, but you're just again, it's like so many phenomenal logos. But not to go throughout your career and relive this, but you
It's
spent
kind
yeah, it is.
of
You're like, wait, I did that, but
fun.
you spent almost 2 years with 20th Century Fox and then Lionsgate. What was that journey, and what was like some high level takeaways through that process?
Oh wow. That was that's a time of my life I don't like to think about. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, let's skip over
I'll
that.
say entertainment is special. I mean, I was living in LA, so I thought, oh, well, I got to dip my toe in entertainment. Like, there's so many amazing companies here. Why I hadn't even thought about that. And I think the biggest life lesson that I learned from entertainment is, you know, I just spent all this time doing this crazy like brand building. So, like, not just thinking about the brand today, but the brand 3 years, the brand 5 years, the brand 10 years out. And I mean, some of the things I see Red Bull doing are things I feel like were placed in roots when I was there, which was so many years ago. And I love the brand building. And I didn't really think about it when I went into entertainment, but you could be working on, you could be working on a trilogy, right? Like I worked on Hunger Games, Catching Fire, um, but every movie release is like a new thing, right? You
Mm,
kind of don't go back to legacy. Like you're maybe building on a brand that's already there, but you're kind of not planting the seeds for future because you just kind of don't know what's going to happen in film. And so that was kind of tough for me. I think I learned like I don't necessarily like being in this space because I feel like I can't do what I do best, which is like some of the strategy and the planning and like the brand building. And once a movie is released, it's pretty formulaic. And once a movie is and the industry's changed a lot now with I think some of the streaming and how releases are coming out. But at the time, it was like, okay, it's opening weekend, we're driving ticket sales, and then you just move on with your life and you never talk about it again. And that was
it's a while.
also hard for me. It was wild because it was like, okay, are we going to do the debrief and like let's analyze what worked and what didn't? It was like, nah, we're on to the next one. It was
Next,
next
yeah,
opening weekend. So I think for me that was a good learning in my career is like something I learned that I just didn't want to pursue, and kind of category that I was like, I can do it, but it's not, what I truly enjoy, I think.
We'll just call that the templated portion of your career journey.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Rinse and repeat. We'll skip over a few, but obviously you'd mentioned Vans, amazing brand, cool product. And what I love about it is, again, the past few, it's kind of like you were doing things that weren't traditional at that moment in time. So social media, buying traditional and digital media and social media in 2015 through 2017. I don't want to say at its infancy, but it's still, you're learning as those social platforms are maturing. What was some big takeaways from that career?
Yeah, I think Vans was also a very fun place to work, I would say. A lot of kind of brand experiential, then you have in-store element, and then the digital piece of it. And obviously our again, another place where attitudinal targeting was so important around fashion and creative expression and being who you are. And there's so many avenues I think we went down on the van side. And I was there through the 50th anniversary, which was a really special moment for the brand. And something that we did was kind of like a social roadblock, which hadn't really been done before. And Snapchat was just kind of started doing advertising at the time, and they just started doing the lenses. No one was really doing them yet. And so I had gone to them and I was like, they were selling them for almost nothing because nobody had done them yet. So I was like, all right, read the tea leaves, right? This is something I do really well. I was like, this is going to be big. I was like, so I basically did an upfront buy with them on these lenses to get them at a very discounted rate. But I was like, I want to be able to use the lenses in like the next 18 months, basically. So they're like,
Mhm.
okay, like we were one of the first partners to be like launch with them. Little did I not know is that those lenses would be going for like $1 million
Yeah.
each, like just 3-4 months out from then. And all the studios were using them for Marvel faces and all kinds of things. So that was like a pretty good bet, I would say, that I took at the time. And we did this kind of social roadblock between like Snapchat and Twitter at the time had this kind of like homepage thing you could buy, and across Facebook. And I don't even know if Instagram was doing ads then. I can't even remember. But we did like kind of this like 50th anniversary social roadblock and like just took over kind of like the home pages, right? The top of the algorithm for all the for all the big social channels. And that was, yeah, I mean, it was totally different for the time and it worked, right? We were able to kind of stand out. We had our best sales of the year that year. And the other thing was, do you remember the Damn Daniel,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
white vans?
Yep.
Okay,
Mhm.
so that was during my era of being there. And I was like, these guys are great. We gotta lean into them. So Josh and Daniel, who I became good friends with, still follow Josh and I on social media. And we brought them to all of our events that summer, and we had them take over all of our social media that summer. And we got them on the Ellen show. We were the ones that donated the shoes for they got, I think they had like a lifetime supply of white vans that we donated to the Ellen show. Uh and then they ended up actually donating a lot of the pairs, which was like a great kind of story from there. But just kind of like really taking that social viral moment when virality was like, I think, more of a thing and not manufactured, and leveraging kind of those guys in our marketing and having fun with it, and kind of having that viral moment like really stretch out. So those were some fun things I did there that were just pretty kind of non-traditional at the time, I would say.
I love how you just slipped in the word non-manufactured, because there's a lot of that happening in the social space today.
I think
Yeah.
most of it is very manufactured. Yes.
What, and across all and your entire journey so far, I mean, you were taking a bet, but you were also having to sell through internally, like, hey guys, this lens thing could be a thing. Or was it just your curiosity and the way that your mind thinks that it's like, okay, you'd said you read it in the tea leaves, but there had to have been a little bit more strategy than that. Or maybe you were just taking like, hey guys, this is super cheap and we're going to take advantage of this. Or maybe a combination of both.
I would say some of the best marketers, it's gut and data. And my Red Bull College time was all about gut.
Yep.
And, there is a risk, a little bit of risk that you take in doing some of these things, but the value of the risk could really pay off, right? And so yeah, I would say there was a bit of convincing, and it was a little bit of a calculated risk. But at the end of the day, we knew it was a platform that people were on, and we wouldn't get nothing from it, right? We'd get just the value from it if we got anything. But the calculated risk was, if we make this single-handed most expensive buy that we've ever made as a brand, that the risk down the road, what we're securing is going to be way more valuable than it is today. And an investment that I think we should make in this platform, and it worked. So I will say, like, a lot of my marketing, my thoughts are always like kind of gut driven and then backed by analytics, or using analytics as a reference point, but kind of not using it to make all the decisions. And then I think, especially when you're doing brand building, you can't always you got to think about, again, get in the customer's head of like what they want to see, what's going to excite them. And you can't always think about what's the ROI going to be in the sale or the download, et cetera, et cetera. You get caught up too much in the minutia.
Mhm.
And kind of the brand actions is what kind of drives your cost per click down over time, right? And I think a lot of brands today are really like focused on performance and what they're going to get in that immediate moment. And I like to think that there's value in what brands are going to get in that immediate moment, but also like the value of something that you do that where you stand out, that you're going to get down the road.
Well, and it's also, you'd mentioned like generational. Like there are also brands like generational. I think about my kids; they're not allowed to drink Red Bull at all. Also, one of my sons is kind of fallen into my sneakerhead like
Uh
passion. Yeah, which also, he's also almost the same size. So he's like, Dad, I have access to all your shoes probably by next December. So he's got that like planned out. But I also have a handful of like certain vans that are more exclusive. And so it's interesting, right? Because it's generational. And I think one of the things you touched on is it's like brands oftentimes, or maybe agencies confuse brands to be like, hey, we as an agency have to do everything in our power to like do quick hits and make sure that this brand stays with us for a long time. Whereas the more strategic route is like, you're building a brand for a very long time, and the audiences are drastically changing how savvy they are, but also now the medium itself is significantly changing alongside of it. So it's also this kind of like playful line of like, how do I yes hit ROI, hit the views, the viewability, but also more importantly, like I need to build longevity in the brand itself.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
I have a pretty good collection of Vans. Some of them are still in boxes that have never been worn.
Oh,
And
nice.
my son, who's only 7, he is a gigantic foot already. And I think in 2 years, he'll probably be the same exact size as me, maybe less time. He's already the same size as my mom. And he's
Oh,
going to
wow.
have an elementary killer collection of shoes to wear for probably about a year until he grows out of them. But
I love it. Yeah.
yeah,
He'll be the dude on campus. I love that.
yeah, for sure.
So kind of skipping ahead, you went back to the agency world for a bit, OMD, where you handled Apple, Skyrocket. So Ring, you were the CMO, head of marketing at Ring, which is where you spent almost a little over a year and a half. And then before that, also head of brand marketing at Ring. What was that like for a product that was, you're having to sell a technology, but also inviting a technology into people's homes? Give
Totally.
us a little bit more about that.
I mean, to me, I kind of see Ring as like a lifestyle brand in a lot of ways, right? Like it captures your life. If you look at like, oh, and it's so, I don't want to say it was easy, but like we had so much great content. We were so lucky, like, to work for a camera brand, even it's a non-traditional sense, a camera brand, and to have so much amazing UGC and stories that people want to tell through the lens of their doorbells and through their cameras. Like such a treasure trove. And that's what excited me about going there. And I think like thinking about Ring as, you know, home security and giving peace of mind, but also like being there to kind of capture these moments with your family and, and to kind of be able to story tell through the lens of doorbells, like was really powerful. And so, I think what I also loved, Jamie Siminoff, who founded Ring, he really cared about brand and brand building. A lot of what the team did before I came there was just telling these amazing stories and telling stories about how Ring had helped people. And we had all these like great stories about how Ring had prevented a theft or had helped stop a fire or had gotten people out of their homes during a fire because someone came and rang the doorbell and woke them up and was able to get them out of the house. And so, it was really inspiring working for Jamie and just being able to kind of carry brand building into like a home security product into a tech product. And
Mhm.
then also, kind of bringing some of my like performance background and digital background and programmatic background and being able to kind of layer, some of the, short-term sales and some of these brand moments into moments where you're kind of also, being able to kind of make a sale and for a digital product. So it was a great time to be there.
What it, yeah, a handful of my buddies are actually contractors, and now it's just kind of like table stakes, right? It's like, hey, you're not going to put the little cheesy doorbell, like you're like, hey, you want a ring? You want me to install the ring
Totally.
into your home? Is kind of where it goes. What do you? I'm going to give you my favorite two personal ring moments. I brief moment, not at all saying I'm a skateboarder, but during COVID, I used to bring my skateboard up here at the corporate office because there was like five of us in the whole building, and I owned air quote the third floor, and I used to skateboard around. And then I watched some master classes with Tony Hawk. So by design, I feel like I'm a professional skateboarder, which I'm not at all. Barely stay on the board. So my ring story is I used to go home as well, and I would like skateboard in the driveway, teach Jake how to skateboard, and I would always just prop the skateboard up because we live in South Louisiana. Like nobody's going to steal your skateboard.
Right.
the, the best ring story I ever have, besides my wife scaring the shit out of my kids all the time with the ring doorbell when we're not home, is the UPS driver picks up the ring or picks him up, and he picks up my skateboard, and he was like nonchalantly like about to skateboard down the driveway, just like test it out, and literally busted his ass. And I'm like on my phone, like capturing it, just laughing my face off. And I always in the back of my head, I'm like, and you guys may have done this, so tell me if you did, but just I always thought that it would be the greatest like ad campaign ever on social.
Totally. You should send it to them.
Yeah,
Send
it's
them the
just like
video.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like capturing the most like
But people would just send us videos like that all the time. And
they
so
really
it's like so easy to get content. Yeah. I mean, we really didn't even have to go out and get video content. People sent that to us all the time. And it's so funny when I told people I work at Ring, everyone has a Ring story.
that's a ring story.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and that's what's so great about the brand.
What do you have a ring story?
Do I have rings? Oh yeah, I have lots of ring stories. But I like you like to scare the shit out of my kids as well. And
It's the best.
during the holidays, they have like different ringtones you can put in your chime, and so
Mhm.
it's still on actually my doorbell, and it really scares my kid. But anytime the doorbell rings, it sounds like there's a ghost in the house.
Oh,
And
amazing.
so they do. I have a chime upstairs and downstairs, so they still get scared today whenever the doorbell rings and like, "Mommy, just change the ringtone." But I just actually think it's so funny. So,
Hey, like no. Yeah, we did that Halloween, and it lingers for a bit. So the meat of the podcast, I want to dive deep into. So you make the transition over to founding your own company called the CMO Sidekick. So share with our listeners a little bit more about what you do. It makes complete sense now why you have this company in my mind. So I'm excited to kind of hear the way that you share it.
yeah, I think when I was at Ring, it was interesting just sitting in the CMO role, and um, I think that a lot of companies have downsized. I don't think that's any, secret. And I think a lot of what has happened is a lot of the layer that gets downside is size is that like senior strategic like layer that sits right under the CMO. And I would say in like most of the organizations I work with and or talk to, those roles have like kind of been eliminated, like either like senior managers or senior directors. Maybe there's a CMO, and then it's like a person 10 years your junior, and then like your team that's executing. And it kind of leaves the CMO in a role. You have to do so many different things as a CMO these days. Like, you're not just doing marketing, you're doing a lot of business planning, you're maybe setting goals, you're looking at, again, long-term brand, short-term brand. There's just lots of things that you're doing, and you just can't get to everything. Like, it's impossible. And especially if you don't have the team support and you don't have the strategic support. And so I kind of identified that there was this hole in the marketplace and a need for CMOs, VP marketing, strategy, chief strategy officers, to have someone to be able to like either extend their brains, and or just have someone who could like independently like either work with them or take on the work, of some of the strategy. And so hence the CMO Sidekick was born. And then there's other organizations that don't have a CMO. And so being able to kind of like give my time fractionally and give value fractionally, I think, at kind of the level that I'm at, and is has been really interesting for some of these mid-sized companies I work for, because I feel like some of the mid-sized companies, they're not going to be able to afford a full-time person. They maybe get a director level person and they're getting director level work. But what they need is someone who can like set their marketing strategy, be able to like give their team direction, and even at a fraction of the time is probably not probably. I've definitely seen more valuable than potentially a full-time hire that's one or two, clicks kind of below. Um, so yeah, it's been really great and really fun. I love kind of working across different clients and kind of being able to bring that value, and working in a lot of different areas, not just B2C, but also B2B, which is, I think, applying B2C tactics to B2B is really interesting, because I think B2B has been really cut, copy, paste for a long time, but it's just not working anymore. It's
Yep.
not working. You can't just email your way into a meeting or inbox your way into a meeting. It's just not. People are not paying attention to that, and they don't want to see it. So I think it's a really interesting space to be in right now, and lots of challenges to solve for.
Yeah. And again, it's going back to we were talking about with Red Bull. It's like the evolution of the consumer has drastically changed, but more importantly, the evolution of media has changed. The way that we consume media is, not to age myself, but my kids are constantly like, if they see a commercial on TV, it's like, what are we doing? Like, are we poor? Can we not afford like the YouTube like premium where we don't have to watch commercials? Joking.
Right.
But it's also like the way they consume media is
Totally.
drastically different the way that I do. So
Like 30
getting rid
seconds? I got to watch something for 30 seconds? Like, what is this? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, "You have no idea." Like, we used to not know what was on TV unless we had a piece of a booklet called the Reader's Digest,
TV
and
guide,
whatever
right.
TV guide, like, what was in there, it was like the gospel, and, like, yes, you have to watch 6 pods. And today, my kids are watching, you know, Ryan Trahan travel to 50 different states, and brands are now sponsoring him through donations through St. Jude, and that's how my kids are now asking for an e-bike.
Right.
And whereas you and I, early on in our careers, the way that they would know about an e-bike is buying, social, online, out of home, and maybe CTV, but that world. So long comment and question, but that's obviously helped bridge that gap, but create those efficiencies in what you do, I would imagine, and having those senior strategists who are probably constantly having to learn and develop and rechange. This just seems like a more strategic approach. I guess that was the gap that you saw.
Yeah, for sure. I think, a lot of times I can go into organizations and just like, I'm very good at like analyzing quickly, like kind of what maybe their main issues are, and then helping them just make adjustments to their strategy, to their staffing, to their content strategy. I mean, I feel like a lot of companies right now too are like just taking Chat GPT for granted. Like, they just make stuff in Chat GPT and put it out in the world. It's like, no, 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 no. We got to read it. We got to look at it.
Right.
Like, you can actually train it to come out better in your tonality and to write like you write. Like, I think, just things like that to me were that are just maybe a little bit obvious, may not be to other organizations. But yeah, being able to kind of just come in and help adjust a strategy, or like take a marketer who's like not living and breathing in the world that I'm in. I'm very lucky. I'm fortunate, right? I go to Cannes and Possible and Adweek, and I go to lots of Think LA things, and I'm constantly like in the industry, like understanding all the different platforms out there. Like right now, like the big thing is like agentic, and building,
Mhm.
helping to bridge like agentic automation around marketing outbound, and like understanding what those companies are and bringing some of that technology to some of my clients that are not even thinking about that yet. And I think that, just really kind of, not every marketer is like afforded the opportunity to kind of have a head up, which is also why I started my business, because I thought I was getting very heads down, and I wanted to have my head up to see what was actually happening in our space. And having a head up to kind of say like, here's a technology, have you thought about this? Or like, let's look at media this way. Or hey, if you want to reach B2B audiences, there's like, here's a non-traditional way to like go after kind of the emails or the companies that you're going after by doing like more traditional programmatic, right? So I think kind of bringing some of those solutions that people just, they have a head down, right, they don't even know about, I think is a value that, I kind of bring to these companies I'm working with.
So outside of going, and you and I saw each other in Cannes, and
That was
it's a
glamorous, wasn't it?
it was very glamorous. It was also very glamorous in where we were, and shout out to Cargo and Harry Cardman, who's a great who's a great podcast listen. A couple of
Best
seasons back,
event of the year. Best of
but
Cargo, hands down, best event at Cannes. I'll say it right now. If Harry's
I would
listening,
argue you could just fly in for Harry's event and then
I
just like
thought
fly.
about it. Just coming in Monday, and then like, coming in Sunday, going to their event Monday, and leaving Tuesday, and traveling around Europe.
Wait, is it true that after I left, I saw that you and one other were like actually took up and like
Went water skiing.
skied? Water
Yeah,
skiing? That was
yeah.
amazing.
Water skiing French Riviera 3 years in a row. Uh, I saw Harry was out there as well with his kids,
His kids,
but
yeah.
yeah, it was fun. That is, I think, the best part of. I grew up in St. Louis. I went to school. I went to camp at Lake of the Ozarks, and
Oh, nice.
grew up water skiing. And yeah, you don't lose it. That is like like getting on a bike thing. I would say it was really fun.
But
Yeah,
not to make everything about an event or grabbing
yeah,
a new client, but that's the importance, right? That's the importance of like storytelling. And you, side note, you do work your ass off and you learn so much at Cannes, and you're surrounded by phenomenal people, but you're also, you're building a brand yourself. So
totally,
here you are, I saw the LinkedIn post and I loved it. And I was like, I just saw her like fully dressed, like, and she jumped in and was skiing. But touch on that a bit, like how obviously you have a phenomenal background, your career journey. I would hire you in a heartbeat if I was looking for some CMO sidekick help. But touch on that as well, like you're, as a brand and as you as a person, for our listeners, the importance of brand building you yourself, where people trust you and say like, okay, besides her resume, besides the product herself, like here's a unique individual. She's skiing in the French Riviera, but like touch on that, the importance for our listeners of building your own personal brand as well.
totally. I mean, relationships in this business are just everything. I mean, not even in the business, in the world, right? In life, like even in Little League, you got to have the relationships so your kids get on the teams, and
Yeah.
But I think that just getting out there and talking to people and seeing people and connecting with people, and you know, COVID was just such an unusual time, and I was out there quite a bit before that, and then obviously we had this like these many years of kind of lockdown, and where the marketing events kind of weren't happening. And you know I, I just like when I at Red Bull love to go out to our events and connect with customers and connect with people. Like I feel like that is kind of what I'm doing with my brand. I love to go to chat with people and hear about their problems and help find them solutions. And my whole business, luckily, so far has just been word of mouth. And it is that trust that I'm building with people, even if they're not in need today. Maybe they're in need tomorrow, or maybe they're not. Maybe they talk to somebody that says, "Oh, I just met somebody that does this," or that would be good fit for you. And I think that just building your own personal brand is really easy to get heads down when you're doing kind of consulting in your own thing. And like for me, the biz dev piece of this is just getting out and talking to people and seeing people and being top of mind, and then leveraging that content on LinkedIn and other places to say, "Hey, I'm out in the world. Like I'm doing it. I'm seeing people. I have a business, but like this is what I'm doing now." And I think a lot of people, when you start your own company, they just think, "Oh, they're in between things," which is changing quite a bit right now. I
It
think a lot of
is.
people are intentionally starting their own companies, intentionally being fractional. Uh, Being a CMO is very hard. There's that 18-month tenure. We go to Cannes and everybody's doing the shift of I'm looking, I'm about to leave, or I've been let go, the juggle of what's open, right? And where can I kind of put myself? And I really been encouraging people like, you have a great background, like diversify your experience. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like, and I know I feel personally fulfilled with the work that I'm doing, and I think I've had some other converts that would say kind of the same, that they're really enjoying kind of being their own boss and getting to kind of provide
Mhm.
value across multiple companies. And but yeah, putting I think your own self out there and your own brand is just really important for success, especially
Yeah.
in what we do.
Yeah. And I feel like you said it best too. It's the evolution of the human consuming products, the medium evolving as well, but more importantly, like the way that agencies are set up, like those siloed walls, like in the out of home space for so long, our sellers have had to deal with just out of home specialists, but now we're seeing these agencies knock down walls and they're like, because of programmatic as well as data and measurement, it's like, well, no, out of home should also fit into CTV and it should also fit
Totally.
into social. And it's this perception of like being specialized in whatever you do in a medium. And then the vendors, publishers themselves have to like sit in these little silos. It's like, why do we as agencies and vendors behave this way if the
Totally.
consumer doesn't care? They go from small screen to big screen to no screen,
Right.
from influencer to an athlete to a recommendation next door. It's kind of like the evolution's happening. So it's interesting for you and the company that you've built because those efficiencies, I don't want to say agencies are kind of fat and bloated, but it's kind of like a lot of these roles technology has solved for, but
Totally.
you still need that very strategic planning, budgeting, operations, research, and it may just be like quick little blips to reset each year. To your point,
Right.
it blows my mind that CMOs like on on the panel, I was like, wait, that woman was at this CPG brand. Now she's at this tech
Like
brand. This
last year. Right. I
right,
know.
literally.
It's wild.
But
Yeah,
yeah, so
out of home is very interesting space to me. Like I do a lot of work actually in the out of home space. Do a little bit of work with DPAA and Barry and team,
shout out to
and done some work with the Adomni team as well, and digital out of home. And they've started to make some transition into how to connect really digital out of home and CTV and video and just video consumption together, because it makes a lot of sense, right? If you think about a person in a customer journey and where they're at, people aren't just sitting home; they're leaving their homes, and it's a reinforcer and another touch point, like that you can connect with somebody and follow them kind of on their journey throughout the day. And I always say there's all these like myths around out of home and like digital out of home. And, one is like, it's not targeted. Well, you can actually get pretty targeted now to like, like down to store locations. You're trying to connect with moms. Like there's places that moms obviously congregate, and other targeting. And then just measurement too. Like you can actually measure, like obviously with maids, you can measure digital out of home, and how that then take those maids and retarget back in other channels and reinforce your messaging. and not use digital out of home not just as this like huge awareness driver. Like, yes, it drives great awareness in a market. It's very loud. Like, I have a client that I work with. I do some work with Zumo,
Hmm.
XUMO, and we just were part of the NASCAR street race in Chicago, and we did a lot of digital out of home in the market because it feels very big,
Hmm.
and it's very visible, but also like being smart about taking that digital out of home and being able to kind of work to build a performance layer with the digital at home, which you can do now. um just not a lot of people know about that,
Yeah.
right? There's just still so many myths in that area, but I think in the kind of that I try to like bring some of those solutions to my clients, and how they can kind of get more out of what they're doing, in channels that just maybe feel more traditional or have more silos up, or their agency's not recommending it because their out of home people aren't in the conversation. I was
Right.
like, well, that's crazy. Like, this is integrated marketing. We should still be talking about it. Just because their agency peoples aren't on the retainer, like, we shouldn't just ignore that. We're just not going to do it, you know?
Yeah, and I think the technology is beginning to evolve pretty quickly. Programmatic being 10 years or younger in the out of home space has really kind of helped expose like, oh wait, this is super easy to buy. But
So
then
easy.
also, yeah, and
So
I
easy.
think yeah, and a lot of it that had to do with like with COVID, but as well as people are just tired of, the social fatigue, right? Like we all love to
Right.
get on Instagram, but I think people are starting to take a step back and be like, whoa, like I'm only being served ads and I'm only being served stories based off of what I am perceived to be.
Yeah.
And, we're starting to have this conversation around, and I heard it a lot in Cannes, which was cool for major brands. It's like, well, out of homes can start to become that anti-algorithm where it disrupts,
Yes.
maybe introduces a product. And even to your point,
Or
like,
pull influencer into out of
yeah,
home,
yeah.
which is
Yeah.
interesting.
So like that influencer economy becomes massive because now if I'm a major influencer, I'm like, I want to be I want to be on the largest medium. I don't
Yeah,
also just want to be on that one quick
totally.
TikTok ad, but I want to be
I think
a core part of that.
I think too, like, you have all these like internet brands that like have come up, and like a lot of times people think, oh, out of home is so hard to buy, right? And what you were saying, like, programmatic digital out of home is so easy to buy. And I
Mhm.
think that that self-serve that you can really democratize that medium for smaller brands, or like these internet brands that maybe don't have these big agencies that are doing things in house. And I think that's kind of like the sweet spot for this industry, is like people are doing these amazing influencer campaigns and then are looking for ways to like amplify that. There's another channel that they can buy on that feels really big, you know? And I think once the industry kind of picks up to that, or figures that out, it's going to be really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the education side. Just like throughout your entire career, you've constantly had to evolve, right? And you learned about lenses on Snapchat, where that's kind of like the first thing you want to buy if you're buying Snapchat. So that same evolution, I think, is starting to happen. And I think that, things like AI are going to start to increase the awareness, but also create those efficiencies across, planning, buying, even on the creative side. And so kind of the last couple of minutes here, what's kind of some of your future focus where you think if you're reading Lindsay's reading the tea leaves that you did years ago, where's a lot of your focus headed? I know you kind of talked about, Gen AI and other types of AI, but what's the big thing? If you have a CMO that is hiring you, what's the big focus on what medium or what technology is like the big wins?
I think it's a great question. There's so many things. I think that I think kind of the one thing I talked about before was just the agentic, and um, what that means, and what kind of automation that's going to bring to marketing. And look, I'm not. I use AI. I live and die by it. Right. I could not do my business without it.
Mhm.
But also, I do think that there is an important human element to it, and I think leveraging the tools and having the right people to leverage the tools is going to be really important, and not just putting all your stock into ChatGPT. I think, but the agentic stuff is really interesting because it will take some of those manual tasks and create automation, like intelligent automation, not just automation, but intelligent automation. And so, that's something that I'm having kind of all of my clients look into. Um, I still think the generative AI, the creative is, um, it's getting really good. It's getting a lot better. So one of my clients is called Glance AI, and it's a generative AI fashion app. And the technology is so good, and it basically shows you like inspirational looks, and then you can kind of go on and buy something that's similar, and it like inspires you, inspires your style. And Yeah, I think that for me, like the thinking about just like AI shopping and AI commerce and where that's going is a really interesting space. I'm trying to learn kind of as much as I can about it right now and get on the front end of it, because I think if you can get front footed in that space, you're going to be really successful as a brand. And that's going to kind of be important to understand like new consumer behaviors that are also coming out of shopping with AI. Like search is going to change, intent is going to change, inspiration is going to change. And so just kind of trying to figure out what the, what is going to kind of be on the cutting edge of technology, but more importantly, what are the consumer behaviors going to be and what's going to really pop out of that?
Yeah. And during this entire conversation, obviously I like to kind of do everything on the fly, but it's every time where you and I began our careers, it was very much like sponsored ad first five. And now everything's like AI suggestion. So having to feed that animal becomes
Oh
a
yeah.
whole nother universe. Yeah.
Oh yeah, working on that with a lot of clients as well. Just the SEO versus LLM SEO and what that looks like, and it's totally different. Ways. A lot of to get into LLM, it's a lot about brand forward PR. Some of the things, how your perception as a brand, your reviews, I think
Mhm.
are really important. So I think that's going to be a whole other animal to solve for as well.
Yeah. Look, I'm super excited for you. I think that this is you're just at the early phases of this new venture, and I think staying at the pulse of technology has always kind of been the theme that I've seen as an outsider. So I'm excited to see where this journey takes you, and looking at a lot of the brands that you represent, like that's the future of buying, the future of interaction, but just as you just said, like I love that. Like AI is just a tool. The human element still is the most pivotal part. And
For sure.
AI can't fly to possible or to can and create those lasting, relationships. And the same is true for brands. So that's going to be
Totally.
exciting.
I
Yeah.
will say though, I probably will put my kids into plumbing school or to be electricians or something like that. So
My wife says it all the time. She's like, "Crap, this college fund," because I think the world of like electrician and plumbers, like that's the way to
yeah,
go.
I got to get
Yeah.
my kids handy into some handy classes. I don't know, but yeah, no, I agree. And but yeah, I think it's gonna the next 5-10 years. It's reading the tea leaves. I think is just gonna be like pivotal for our next generation and the generation behind that, and how our roles evolve. And that's gonna be it's kind of gonna be a little scary but exciting to see. And I think hopefully there'll be a need for us in the next the rest of our careers. I think there will be. I think we'll be okay. But yeah,
Yeah, I don't robots can't water ski, so I think you're all set.
yeah, exactly.
I love it. Well, listen, my friend, this has been so much fun. I'm excited to watch this evolution for the company and all the people that get to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you having me.